Welcome to Biscuits and Sunshine, serving you a dose of wisdom and humor with a dash of radiance, with your hosts, Callie and Landra.
Hey y'all, welcome to our podcast. We are really so excited to be together today.
For sure. It makes me hella happy to have you here with us. So we're recording this from Distant Spore Audio in Athens, Greece. And this is our first episode.
Yeah. So you might be asking why Biscuits and Sunshine, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But Biscuits and Sunshine was born out of a shared desire to nourish our creative souls. As you'll come to learn, Landra and I are friends, the greatest of friends. We started this podcast to capture the rich conversation we have naturally. We know there are women out there just like us in the world. Women who've come before, women who are having a similar experience, and those who have yet to even start their journeys.
Exactly. And we really wanted to create a community where we can reflect, laugh, learn, and grow.
Don't you mean live, laugh, love?
All right. Something you can totally write out and post on our wall like that. No, seriously, though, we just thought this would be a really fun time for us to reflect on our own experiences and really invite others to do the same. I think sometimes it's easy where we could feel like, oh, it's only me, and just want people to feel less alone in this journey of what it's like to be a woman in the world these days. And we want people to feel empowered as we feel empowered by each other and other women in the world.
In each episode, you can expect moments of reflection and discovery as we discuss what it's like to live from a place of authenticity. On today's podcast, we're going to give you an inside look at who we are. If we're going to be spending time together, we at least need to know a little bit more about each other. We'll talk a little bit about our backgrounds and how our experiences have made us who we are. But now, what do we do? I'm just kidding. We have it all planned out.
Exactly. You know, as two air signs, planning is key because it creates a structure for us within where we can find the freedom to let the magic appear. So we actually share the same birthday, which is wild, but that's for a whole nother episode.
Super crazy.
Today we're talking about who are we? So easy peasy, right?
Absolutely right. Landra, who are you?
Oh, well, thanks for asking, Callie. Gosh, that is such a broad question. Oh, how do I want to answer that? Well, I am a woman living in Athens, Greece. I come from Northern California, and I enjoy so many different things. I enjoy dance, time in nature. I am childless by choice. What else?
When you think about maybe your place in the world, like how do you feel about where you are in life?
Oh, still learning, still growing. It's interesting because I'm reflecting on coming up on a big birthday next year. But I still in that place of learning and growing.
I think that's something we share. I think we could both define ourselves as seekers. I don't think we ever get enough learning, and I think that it's something that connects us, and it also connects kind of this larger friend group that we seem to be developing here in Athens. From my perspective, I'm 100% a seeker. I'm a daughter. I'm a friend. I'm a sister. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a singer. I like to consider myself a painter, but it depends on what your definition of art is. I think I'm a lot of things. And when I look back at my life to this point, I'm really proud of who I have been in the different phases of life. And maybe I didn't always feel that way. But in this moment today, as we record, I'm in this really confident, sort of comfortable place. I'm really proud of what I've done. And I'm really proud of who I am. So I'm really glad that we start this podcast with that, and that I get to start from this kind of sort of position of power and this position of comfort.
I really love that. Yeah, confidence definitely exudes in that. You know, you got me thinking another big part of myself that I'm like, hello, how did I not share that? Especially having moved across the world, is I'm a big traveler. And I just absolutely love to explore. There's something about it really makes me thrive is being outside my comfort zone. And I think it also comes back to really, finding people interesting. And so, yeah, I'm, like, totally that person, like you said, like, friend, like, all the things. And, like, if you get me in a taxi, I am, like, talking it up to, like, the taxi driver. I wanna know your story, who you are. I don't know, there's something about that. But then I've also found throughout the years, there is that, like, I get energy from others, but then I'm realizing in the process of being out in the world, I also need to restore myself.
Mhm.
And so I find myself kind of, being more reflective and more of the observer. And that's actually been interesting as I've embarked on, like you said, some of those creative pursuits of like writing and really kind of, thinking back about past, but also thinking about the future orientation. And that requires me to have a little bit more solitude in my life.
Absolutely. I find the older I get, the more I enjoy time by myself. And I think both of us have really like peaceful sort of upbringings, like upbringings and childhoods that were full of love. And I think that allows us, for me specifically, I know I can speak to my own experience. It's allowed me to kind of cultivate a safe place in my head where I feel very comfortable to retreat and kind of think about, okay, well, what is it that I want out of life? Who do I want to be? What do I need to get there? And how can I make those things happen? And as the older I get, the more I'm able to kind of sit in that and do that sort of where are you now? That check in with yourself.
Mhm.
Because I said, today I feel really good. I'm on a kind of really good workout routine. I had my favorite breakfast this morning and I had my cup of coffee. I'm feeling really good. I feel really good about life. And I'm looking out at the year ahead and I'm very excited. I
Mm,
don't have a
mhm.
whole plan, but there are a couple of projects that I have that really excite me. And so if we're thinking about like who we are and where are we now, I'm in a place of maybe potentially we have this idea of reaping and sowing, right? We sow seeds to reap later. And I feel like some of the things that I have put into the ground, I've put into the works are
Mm.
starting to mature and starting to develop. And I'm really excited to see what blossoms, what blooms, and what comes of those sorts of endeavors.
Yeah, that takes a lot of, thought and a lot of patience.
Well, that's the one thing I don't have a lot of is patience. So I think my life is a constant exercise in patience.
I hear that, girl. And, yeah, I think you pretty much got, us into that next question of, where are you today and where do you come from that place? So is there anything else left you wanna add to that?
I think something we talked about as we kind of thought through this podcast and these episodes that we're starting with, it's a good thing for me to remind myself that any conversation and anything that's put out, whether it's written, whether it's photographic, whether it's painted, it's a snapshot in time. And who we are, how we come places, how we get there, it changes and it's supposed to change because when you stop changing and you stop growing, like what is life? And so we should embrace change, what they say, change is the only constant in life. Like we should continue to embrace that. Today I feel great, tomorrow I might feel like crap, who knows? I might not want to go work out, I might not want to get out of bed, but I'm really happy that today I have none of those issues.
That's nice. You really have to kinda soak in that because change can be scary. But then I'm constantly reminded by mentors that I have is, like, change is always constant.
Uh-huh.
But then
Absolutely.
there's that resistance that I know I find myself in some days, and so when you have the days that you're having, like today, you have to really just soak it in.
Yeah. And sometimes, we talk a lot about like the go and the flow.
Mm.
Like sometimes when you feel this way and you feel really excited and you feel like you're coming from a good place, I find myself somewhat tempted to be like, we're going to get everything done. I'm going to check off everything on my list.
Yes.
And I have to really listen to myself and do that kind of internal check in to say, I do feel really good. And I'm going to use this confidence and this comfort to sort of love on myself and
Mm.
rest
Yeah.
and be still or be quiet or just read. Even though maybe I do have like a long to-do list, I'm just going to use this energy for something that restores me versus helps me check things off.
Mm. Something you said really resonates with what I've been working with my therapist on is, like, when moments feel good, really giving yourself a little space to pause and just, let it feel good. so often we're always orienting to what's not working. And it's so important just to really, yeah, give yourself that space to really bask in the pleasure of whatever it is. Yeah, that's something I'm realizing at this point in my life. It's like it takes work. It
Mhm.
isn't something that just naturally comes. Yeah, so I love that you said that. It really, really resonates.
It's part of that constant growth.
Hmm.
And what you said, we know change is always gonna be there, and yet we still fight it. We fight the change because we want to hang on to the good and we want the bad to go away very quickly.
Yeah.
And you kinda need both feelings, you need both experiences to understand that good can be amazing if we let ourselves enjoy it, and the bad will always pass. But if you
Mm.
don't have the experience of the 2, sometimes you get stuck.
So true. So true. Yeah. You mentioned who you are as an entrepreneur. And yeah, same here. And what it's so interesting, I am like deep into this entrepreneurial journey. And I have had so many iterations of, trying new things. Sometimes it fails, sometimes it works out amazing, and then starting over again.
Mm,
And I'm in that moment of like a reflection point of starting over again, and how some days I'm like, oh, this is hard. And I'm like, girl, you have been here before.
absolutely.
Come on now.
Absolutely.
So I definitely come here with that. You mentioned creativity. That's another area where I have been reclaiming that I am a creative probably for like the last, oh, I don't know, 7, 8 years.
Mm,
And that has taken many different forms. And so I have made it a goal this year to, and not like an overly rigid structured, like, it's got to look this way. But no, it's a goal that every month I'm trying something new in a different creative pursuit.
I love that.
And so this podcast is one of those.
Yes! And so when you think about it, you mentioned creativity. Is creativity something that makes you feel alive? And what are some of those other things?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think, the question of what makes me come alive is like, it's when you're doing something that I really, or not you, but I am doing something I feel really truly embodied
Mm,
and like in the moment, in my body. I'm not in my head ruminating about the past or like dreading or worried about the future. And so, yeah, the creativity of all of its forms. Right now, we're in a spoken podcast, but if I'm writing, if I'm painting, absolutely. The other thing I was thinking about is like, it all comes back to, again, mentioning embodiment. But when I am like hiking and my heart rate is like, pumping that blood, it's like, again, I'm feeling like so alive, right? Or I love being in water, when I get into the sea and I used to be that person that like really like little by little I'm going to inch in, and lately I've just been like, and maybe it's because I'm here in
yeah,
Greece and
I
I'm
was
like,
gonna say the same thing.
oh my god, I'm by the Aegean Sea, I'm like, I'm not taking it for granted, so I am just like that person just like jumping in all for it, and I feel so alive because also my body's like, oh, it's so cold.
Especially here. Like, there's no way to kind of ease yourself in. I think it's also very interesting that living here, we now call it the sea because there is no ocean
Yeah.
in like Greece, and yet coming from California and coming from Alabama, like it's ocean, Pacific, it's the Gulf of Mexico, it's the Atlantic. We're surrounded by oceans, but
Mm-hmm.
here it's the sea, and I like the fact that we've kind of both embraced that.
Oh, and it's taken me probably like a couple years to get it right
I
because
know.
I'm like, oh, the ocean. I mean, the sea.
Yeah, yeah. And I find myself talking to folks from the US and I'm thinking, yeah, we went to the sea today. And I wonder if that sounds strange. Anyway, one of those little cultural changes and differences that you choose to embrace or you don't.
Exactly.
I would say sea. The sea, being outside, definitely makes me feel alive. One thing that I really love is being able to make connections and build community.
Mm.
I know one of the things that we share, it's one of the reasons we started this podcast is to create a digital community, a community where we can share things. I like sitting at a table. Okay, Landra and I are great friends. We have another great friend. We've added more great friends to our group. And on Friday, we all got coffee together, a small group of us.
Hmm.
And I had this moment. I have had moments like this in the past too, where I literally tear up in the middle of some sort of
Oh
activity.
my God, she does. It's so cute.
But you realize that you're living the life that you've always dreamed of living. It's not perfect. There are some things in life that I still want to achieve and goals that I have. But I'm so grateful for these moments. So on Friday, we're getting coffee and we're laughing and we're sharing, and we've got these friends from different parts of our lives and different kind
Parts of the world.
yeah, different parts of the world for sure. And we're all just sitting there having coffee, and I'm thinking, this is it. Like, this is it. My grandfather used to say, "Maftine rapi." Ah, this is love. And I was
Oh,
just, it's like, my body feels so warm. It's just such a delight for me, and that to me is like feeling alive. This bringing people together and having friendships blossom from friendships that I've had and having groups grow. I have always been one of these people, much to the frustration of some friends, where you have to very specifically tell me, let's just have lunch, you and I, because I will invite everyone I know to have lunch with us.
you're so Greek.
It's like when I would be in the office and my friend would say, hey, let's grab lunch tomorrow. By the time tomorrow rolls around, there are already 6 other people coming with us, because I like to be this point of connection, and I like people to like to be around each other and find people that they have commonality with. So that's what makes me feel alive, really, is connection, community. It's a part of
Mm.
my personality. If we want to talk Enneagram, like, I'm the hostess. It makes total sense.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I love that about you. And I definitely share that as well, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's nice. It's nice, especially when you find friends who don't actually care that you have also invited 7 other people to do this activity with you. It's nice.
Yeah.
Another thing I'm learning it as I grow up is how to read those situations.
Mm.
You can also imagine how this was somewhat difficult for me in college if someone would say, hey, maybe you and I should go grab a drink. Okay, I didn't know it was a date because you didn't really explicitly say that. So here, me and 3 other people show up for this drink.
Oh my
Oh, you
God,
live
I
and you
love
learn.
it. Yeah. Yeah. And I know what you mean, though. And especially, gosh, we've been friends now. Has it been year?
2, 2.5, 3?
I was gonna say almost 3.
Yeah.
Yep. And, both had moved here at kind of within 6 months of one another, but definitely where there was that feeling of like, oh, I want to make a girlfriend. I moved here with my husband. I don't think I mentioned that. And, yeah, so it's like not only did I feel like I hit the lottery or the jackpot meeting you, but then also when we have found other women, other friends to kind of bring into the circle that are just genuinely wonderful people. It just like, oh,
Yeah, you feel your tribe expand.
yes.
And yeah, adult friendships are strange to come by anyway, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that is something we all share, especially as people who maybe are living a life outside of the traditional life or the standard,
Mm,
the sort of path that's laid out for us in whatever culture you grow up with. Every culture has this idea of what life should look like.
yeah.
And I think we are 2 people. Our friends are also people who have kind of bucked that trend.
Mm.
And being able to find folks who are like, oh yeah. It's like, how many times do we say, I found someone and I think she's really like us.
That's true.
It
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, definitely.
So
Yeah.
if you're listening to this and we all hang out, you're one of those people.
Privilege. Oh, I love that.
Me
Love
too, me
that
too.
for sure. So, tell me, can you think about like a recent lesson that you learned that you want to share?
Oh man. I feel like last year kind of, hmm, I know that I come from like a place of total privilege when I talk about anything, because I really have lived just this most wonderful, magical life. Um, I would say 2023 kind of threw me for some loops.
Mm,
And one of the lessons I have learned is that, very much like what you said earlier, as much as we um, look forward to the happiness and try to hold on to the joy, it's also really important to allow ourselves to feel the sadness.
yeah.
It's like I um, had this relationship that ended, and I knew, and it impacted me so much on such a deep level that even though I was struggling, I knew I had to grieve the end of it in order to be able to move on. And I really don't think I've ever said that about a relationship before. Like, really allowing myself to be sad, because I was reading a story in The Atlantic the other day about, like, we have the post breakup, I'm thriving post.
Yeah.
And I knew that I didn't feel that way. And I knew that in order to be able to even get there, not that I would post it on social, but in order to even get there, I had to really feel the fact that I was mourning the loss of something that we had planned on and we had built for, and like this future that I knew would never come to fruition with this one person. So I think that's a lesson I have learned recently is feeling the sadness in order to not carry it with me always.
Mm,
I'll bring the lessons forward, but I can leave the sadness in that moment in life. That's something that uh, you never really think, okay, this is the lesson I want to learn now, how to grieve
mm,
properly. No one says that, right?
yeah,
And there are so many different layers to grief, and it is a spectrum of experience for
yeah,
so many people. But that's one of the things when I think about something I've learned recently that really stuck with me, that's it.
yeah. I like that so real. When you kind of joked about post relationship, like, it's fine, I'm thriving.
Yeah,
I'm like, oh man, it's like, it's almost like a little bit of a trauma response.
100%.
It's like, I don't want to feel that, but I want to feel the good. And so I'm just going to like bury that and push it all down. And then it rears its ugly head later. Cause I know I've done that
Yeah,
with
it's
like
like,
romantic relationships.
what
Absolutely.
does what that quote that everyone like says from Shakespeare, me doth think the lady protests too much. Maybe the images that we're portraying on social media are as
Mm,
much to make us believe our lives are good as
yes.
everyone else.
Yes.
And I don't know, that feels inauthentic to the way I live, to the way I know
Yeah.
you live. So I
Oh
think,
my goodness. Yeah. I think of that young version of myself, late 20s, post breakup, thought it was like the end of the world and how it propelled me into. I did some amazing things, but like it was like, I'm going to do this by I'll show you.
oh yeah,
And it almost kind of punished myself a little bit of like working harder and like
yeah,
in certain elements. But yeah, it's so interesting that you shared that. It really resonated with me, kind of taking me back a little bit.
yeah. Sometimes things are meant to come into the world. Really great things are meant to come into the world, and sometimes you can push through bad things in order to make those happen. But I think we have to continually challenge ourselves to say, um, am I operating from the healthiest place? Like you can push through anything. My mom used to tell me, especially about jobs, you can do anything for a year. Take this job, and if you hate it in a year, like we support you in whatever choice you make. And so you think about like, am I growing and am I operating from a place of authentic strength, authentic happiness? And for me now, I know that if when bad things happen, I have to sort of feel that. And then
Mm-hmm.
I know because what perspective gives you, life gives you perspective. You know that you'll get through whatever it is. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Kelly Clarkson in the house.
What about you? What about a recent lesson that you've
Yeah,
had?
yeah. I mean, you brought up the topic of grief, and that really hits home. At the end of last year, I lost my dad, and I just the lesson I really learned in that is how both loss and love are so tightly braided together.
Mm,
I recently heard somebody say that, and it really, really resonated with me. I'm like, that's totally it. And yeah, it wasn't just a out of the blue loss. Well, I mean, it kind of was, but it wasn't. Like my dad was a 29-year cancer survivor. So at the age of 19, I was acutely aware and actually almost thought that I would lose my dad. And then fast forward 29 years later, I've had all these wonderful memories and experiences. And he has had health issues along the way. It wasn't like he got sick and then he was better and then he passed away. It's like it was a journey and kind of what you were saying, giving myself this space to feel the sadness and realizing the grief was happening. I allowed myself to allow the grief to happen in the moment when he was still alive in that last month of his life. And one thing I got to apply is being able to take care of myself
mm,
because the younger version of myself and having lost other people in my life, it was all about like be the caretaker, just give, give, give until I was depleted. And then it was like collapse and just like darkness and despair. And so, in a way, the lesson I was able to learn and apply was how do I still feel this really sad feelings and this experience, but also still really take care of myself. So, what that looked like was, yeah, spending a long time at the hospital and just great time with him, but also getting out in nature. I was in still a big city, but I found a beautiful neighborhood that just had the beautiful fall seasons of the changing of the colors of the trees and the the leaves falling away from the trees in the following weeks. And so, yeah, it was a whole new experience of grief, and not that it's not hard, and like you said, it's just a spectrum, it's not over, but I don't know, I just had this new relationship to it.
Hmm.
Yeah, so I think there still are lessons emerging, but that is definitely one that's really fresh and really alive right now.
I think culturally there are some emotions that we aren't really taught how to deal with.
Mm.
Uh, Across the board, we've talked about this before,
Oh, yeah.
and uh, it's interesting. It's interesting to see your friends and the people that you love sort of go through these experiences and deepen their own understanding of what it fully means to be human. Because love, you can't open yourself to love without being vulnerable. And I feel like that, like my grandfather used to say, "Maftine rapi." Like that's truly what living
Mm.
is to love and to be vulnerable enough to say, this is something I want to go after.
Yeah.
And to fully be aware of that might hurt one day.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, and I wouldn't change it.
Absolutely.
It absolutely did, and those of you that don't physically know me and have seen me and, maybe sometime you might see this on social media, but I don't wear my heart on my sleeve, I wear my heart on my wrist. It's a tattoo of an open heart, intentionally, that I got on my wrist to remind myself that love is the absence of fear, and I remind myself on those days where it feels so hard, and sadness, that, like, it hurts this much because I love so much. And I would never, ever change that for anything.
You guys see why I love her so much? Oh, I find such peace and light in being in Landra's company. Like,
Oh, stop.
stop. It's true. It's true, though. Like, this is the heart of Biscuits and Sunshine. These conversations and these kind of thoughts, and maybe we say something that resonates with you. Maybe we don't. And hopefully, if we didn't, you might come back for our next episode.
I mean, there's so many things too. I think just now, being in this real authentic conversation, I'm like, ooh, there's a podcast about this.
Yeah.
Ooh, there's a podcast about that. Like, I could just see the topics, really, we can go flesh them out and really go deeper.
Absolutely. And we also, at some point, will want to know what you guys want to hear us talk about. But we do have some sort of a plan for the next couple episodes.
Oh,
So.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
We do want to give a big thank you to our team for supporting us on the podcast, including Alex with Distant Sport Audio for all the technical and audio expertise. We also, of course, have to shout out y'all who chose to listen to this, our very first podcast episode.
And we want to say, let this be the week that you do something you've been talking about doing forever, like starting a podcast. Whatever that is for you. Next week, we'll talk more about how we got here and where we're going.
If you love what we're serving up here at Biscuits and Sunshine, be sure to subscribe and rate, and definitely follow us on Instagram. This is Biscuits and Sunshine with Callie and Landra.